Either we can all sit together and sing Kumbaya and nobody can enforce the law, or we're going to have violence. But that's not really the case.
Donald Trump and his entire administration has made it clear that they'd be happy to see unrest come out of sending in the National Guard.
The solution is empower the local law enforcement, give them the funds that they need.
If he's president of the United States, he should be more unified in the way he speaks about people. He shouldn't say he hates his opponents.
They debanked us, they deplatformed us. They wanted to see us in jail. They wanted to see us arrested. They wanted to see my father behind bars. They wanted me to be right next to him. They wanted to see our family bankrupt. They wanted to see the MAGA movement dead.
Why have all the Epstein Files not been released? And do you think they should? Well, later on, Eric Trump gives me his outrageously uncensored views on everything from Charlie Kirk's murder to Pete Hegseth's ban on beards. And I'll be joined shortly by the House Speaker, Mike Johnson. We'll begin with a volcanic eruption of debatable news stories. Former FBI Director James Comey is being arraigned on criminal charges. Pam Bondi is lambasted by senators on everything from the Epstein Files to the deployment of National Guard troops in cities nationwide. The government shutdown continues, causing air travel chaos. And Whoopi Goldberg says that American football fans should black up for the Super Bowl to help undocumented migrants. Joining me to try and make sense of all this is Shri Thanedar, Democratic Congressman from Michigan, host of the Michael Knowles Show on Daily Wire, Michael Knowles, and Jack Cocchiarella, the progressive commentator and YouTuber. Well, welcome to all of you. Michael Knowles, I started off with a very bold promise that we would try and make sense of what I've just said. There's a lot going on here, a lot to unpack. Let me just start with one thing. I watched Pam Bondi yesterday, and there are some sort of fundamental principles at play here in various things this administration is doing, one of which is about the ability of the federal government to deploy federal troops into states that are not Washington, D.C. Do you feel comfortable about them doing it? And let me just say straight off the top, I'm not sure how I feel about this, because to me, I get the overarching, I think, plan, which is visibility on the streets to deter criminals. But let's take a look at the clip, and then I'll come back to you.
The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
So, again, the question, Michael, do you feel comfortable this is constitutional?
Not only do I feel comfortable, I'm happy to see that the federal government is stepping in where the local and state governments have failed. This is one of the main things that the federal government is for. The Insurrection Act has been invoked many times throughout American history by both parties. Eisenhower, Kennedy, it's been called in by, it's been requested rather by Democrat governors. And so that's really unsurprising. And what we're looking at here is issue compounding on issue, because we've had this massive invasion of foreign nationals, many of whom are working with foreign terrorist organizations, the criminal cartels that control the southern border. We have crime spiraling out of control generally in places like Chicago, which in terms of the number of murders leads the country, something like 110,000 gang members in Chicago alone. And you're seeing an uptick in political violence, particularly from the left, reflected in multiple surveys and then obviously in the horrific incidents that we've seen recently. Most recently, the leftist who was going to bomb the cathedral in Washington, D.C., but of course, going back to Charlie's assassination and others. So you're having a lot of disorder. This is why we have the Insurrection Act. It's why we have the federal government, because I think people are debating between these two false options. Either we can all sit together and sing Kumbaya and nobody can enforce the law, or we're going to have violence. But that's not really the case. The two options you have are you can have just, prudent state violence, that is to say, cops enforcing the law and putting the bad guys in jail, or you can have what you're seeing increasingly celebrated by the left, which is vigilante violence, which is unjust. And I want the just kind. I want an orderly society, and I don't think we should just consign people who happen to live in failed blue cities to misery and rape and murder and all the rest of it.
Okay, Shri Thanedar, your response to that?
Well, look, militarization of our cities is not the answer. Just yesterday, a mother who's in America for 30 years. She was going to a grocery store to buy some ingredients so she can make meatball soup for her kids. And ISIS detained her. She's now behind in the ICE detention center. I saw her daughter crying. These are not gang members. These are not hardened criminals. They're arresting 17-year-old high school kids, putting away American citizens, 4, 5-year-old American citizens, kids who are suffering from leukemia in the ICE detention center, losing their doctor's appointments. You can talk all about gang members. Nobody. Everybody wants.
No, I wouldn't talk about that. Look, just to stop you there, but I want to talk specifically about the deployment of federal troops, not necessarily the wider separate issue of what ICE is doing with undocumented people in the United States. I've debated that a lot. We can touch on that in a moment, but just specifically on the deployment of federal troops in states which are not DC, where obviously the federal government can do that. The president has that power. There is this raging argument now about whether it is constitutional, whether it is lawful for the president of the United States to do what Trump is now rolling out in places like Chicago. What is your view of that?
It's not only not legal, it's not only unconstitutional, but more importantly, it's not even good business, because this costs so much, putting federal troops in cities. Instead of that, if federal government can give the grants so that local police, law enforcement can hire more people. Right now, they are severely understaffed. They don't have the resources they need to keep our cities safe. Now, in a long-term process...
But aren't you answering your question? I mean, aren't you
I think you're
making
the point.
Right. I mean, in a way, what you just said is the rationale for doing it, isn't it? I mean, they're under-resourced. No. They don't have enough people. They can't control the crime. Donald Trump is recognizing this, and he's doing something about it. And I'm curious about how many regular Americans who live in some of these very crime-ridden inner cities in America are really as opposed to it as you sound like you are. Because, if you've got a lot of crime going on around you and the police are woefully under-resourced, why would you object to seeing some troops on the streets to just try and restore order and perhaps send a real message to criminals?
See, putting military and reserves all over America, major American cities, and militarization of our country is not the solution. The solution is empower the local law enforcement, give them the funds that they need. It's the funding that needs to come so we can have a more long-term, long-lasting solution to it.
Congressman, are you familiar with the Insurrection Act?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
And so what do you think that's for? You said that this was illegal. You said it was not unconstitutional and illegal for the federal government to send National Guard into cities and states. What do you think the Insurrection Act is for?
Well, look, this is a issue that the local government should be handling. This is an issue.
What is the answer to
I don't think you understand the Insurrection Act.
Right, to Michael's... well, let me just ask, Congressman, do you actually know what the Insurrection Act says?
Yes, but this is...
hang on. What does it say?
Well, look, what we saw happen in January 6th in the Congress, that's insurrection.
No, that's not the question. The question is, are you familiar? Obviously, the government is citing the Insurrection Act as the empowerment to do what it's doing. Are you familiar with what the Insurrection Act allows?
Yes, I am. But look, this president has used all kinds of excuses to break the law. This president has
No, but that is the law. So what is the law, Congressman? You say you're familiar with the Insurrection Act, but you don't seem to be able to describe what it does, and you're actually contradicting it. So what do you think the Insurrection Act does?
Look, the issue here is that we need our cities safe. Americans want...
Well, Congressman, with all due respect, that's not an answer to the question. I mean,
can you lay out what you believe allows Donald Trump to act so unlawfully?
Hang on, Jack, I'm going to come to you very shortly, but just to be clear, Congressman, it's a pretty simple question that Michael posed, which is the government are citing the Insurrection Act as the rationale and the legal tool by which they can do what they're doing. You said it's illegal and wrong and they shouldn't be doing it, but you seem to be struggling to explain what the Insurrection Act actually is. And Michael, quite rightly, is saying, well, can you just tell us?
Well, whatever it is, when the National Guards are picking up trash and the National Guards are watering the flowers, that is not Insurrection Act, and that's not what this is meant to be.
But do you know what it is, the act?
Yeah.
What is it?
When there is an insurrection, the government has powers to use military, use reserve to address those situations. And this is clearly not the situation here. What we need to do is empower local law enforcement.
Okay, Michael, your response to that. Data brokers track everything you do online. They sell your personal data to advertisers, scammers, potential employers, insurance companies, and basically anyone who's willing to buy it. Many are now deliberately making it harder to opt out. That's why I use ExpressVPN. It hides your IP address and reroutes all of your online traffic through secure, encrypted servers, which stops data brokers and hackers from tracking you. US customers can also use Identity Defender, which requests the deletion of your data from their records, alerts you if your information is used, and even provides identity theft insurance. ExpressVPN is trusted by millions and works on laptops, phones, tablets, TVs, and more. I use it, and you should too. Right now, get an extra 4 months of ExpressVPN for free. Just scan the QR code on the screen or go to expressvpn.com/peers and get 4 extra months for free. That's expressvpn.com/peers.
Yeah, I think the congressman might be a little bit confused because he said that the federal government is breaking the law by sending the National Guard in to restore order to the cities where crime has spiraled out of control, where there's obviously a violation of federal law with all of the illegal aliens running about, and that is actually what it's for. We have a federal government in order to step in when the local and state governments fail. And so this has been used many, many times, not merely to restore order if there's some violent revolution, but even, for instance, to desegregate schools. This has been used many, many times over the course of American history. There's nothing illegal about it. And in fact, what President Trump is doing right now is one of the clearest and most just uses of the Insurrection Act when you have cities that are failing, that in your own words, cannot enforce the law, are under-resourced, and are falling into disorder. So I think you've made a good argument for what President Trump is doing.
Okay.
Well, look what he's doing.
Let me bring in Jack. I want to bring in Jack. He's been waiting patiently. I mean, Jack, it seemed to me the congressman actually, maybe inadvertently, gave the explanation for why Trump feels justified in using the Insurrection Act. Because if you agree that the law enforcement in these very crime-ridden cities is failing and under-resourced, then why shouldn't the government use the Insurrection Act to put troops on the ground and try and restore proper order?
Well, because I don't think the intention is to restore proper order. Donald Trump and his entire administration has made it clear that they'd be happy to see unrest come out of sending in the National Guard. That's what they wanted out of their attack on LA. That's what they wanted to happen in DC. Donald Trump sees this as an opportunity
Do you have any evidence for that?
To intimidate people. It's come out directly of the administration that they think it is a win if they go into Portland and nothing happens, but nothing is happening. It's people in T-Rex Halloween costumes who are getting maced for simply exercising their First Amendment right, which, Michael, I thought you cared about. It doesn't really seem like that's the case. But they've also said that if there is
where are you getting that from? Hold on, before you make you made an argument.
I think if you would allow me to finish my point,
the Trump administration wants disorder and has admitted this. What's your evidence?
You don't like to hear people speak out, and now I'm delivering a point that you don't seem to like, and you want to silence me. That's what this administration does. It's okay. You don't have the power to do that today.
Now, Jack, to be clear, you made a statement that the Trump administration actively wanted disorder, and Michael, I think, understandably, because I would ask the same thing. Where is the evidence?
It has been reported.
Where is the evidence that they wanted disorder?
It has been reported that this administration sees it as a win if unrest comes out of the deployment. It came out of Axios, that they see it as a win if there is unrest because of these deployments. Because they want to say, look at this hellscape in Portland, when all of the photos that I've seen are just like people in T-Rex costumes hanging out and going to the farmer's market. And if you really want to deploy the National Guard, Mike Johnson's district could certainly use it. These failing red states. If you want to talk about states that are failing, red states are failing. They need to be subsidized by California and New York, Massachusetts. These states, these Republican states that are being run into the ground, if you're talking about people who need aid and assistance, they're suckling off of California. It has nothing to do with the crime-ridden, failing blue states. It's a non-issue. And this politics of subtraction.
You think there's no crime in Chicago?
One second, Michael.
You think Chicago's doing all right?
This politics of subtraction where you think if you just take away and take away and take away and we'll eventually hit a bottom, it just doesn't actually exist as a real theory. If you thought that law enforcement was the answer to this problem, Donald Trump wouldn't be cutting the budget of police across the country to the tune of billions of dollars. Like, that wouldn't be happening. So you don't really have a
increase the law enforcement budget.
First of all, that's not true, which is what just took place in his budget.
He did. That was the big beautiful bill. That was one of the key provisions of the big beautiful bill.
That is absolutely untrue. So you don't even have this like cogent theory of policing or law enforcement that you want to see carried out.
Your argument is that the big beautiful bill did
intimidation.
not increase law enforcement funding at the federal level.
Donald Trump has cut again and again.
Congressman, could you please clarify for our confused liberal friend here?
Yeah, we need to have a long-term solution to this, and that is only by reinforcing our local law enforcement. That's what we need to do.
Congressman, did the big beautiful bill increase federal law enforcement funding?
Again, the point, Congressman, is whether in the big beautiful bill there was an increase or a decrease in federal spending for law enforcement. Which one was it?
Well, there was an increase, but look.
Okay, so then again, I come back to Jack. So Jack, your fellow left winger on the panel has just contradicted you and said, well, hang on, Congressman, hang on.
Yeah.
Jack, you've just heard there from a Democratic congressman that the big beautiful bill actually increased federal spending on law enforcement, the opposite of what you just said.
I think he's misspeaking. Donald Trump has done nothing to increase police budgets.
He's misspeaking.
Donald Trump doesn't really care.
I don't think he's
in
misspeaking.
Congress.
I think one person's misspeaking here, and it may be you.
It's not. There's nothing that Donald Trump has done to actually, one second, there's nothing that Donald Trump, the supposed back the blue guy, has done to support police in this country. He doesn't actually care. It's a gimmick. It's a game. Michael, I know you're familiar with that. It's fine. But Donald Trump doesn't care. If he did, he wouldn't have pardoned 1,500 cop-beating insurrectionists to go out and reoffend and reoffend. If you want to talk about crime in this country and who's being let loose on the streets, I think Donald Trump is allowing that to happen more than any other single person in this country. So I don't really know how you could make the case that this administration cares about policing, cares about crime, cares about law enforcement, when every action that they have publicly taken and celebrated is to the opposite of that argument, Michael.
Yeah, I guess there are very few things that Democrat congressmen and I agree on, but what Congress just did in President Trump's big beautiful bill would happen to be one of them, and it's that he's increased federal law enforcement funding. So I don't know where your confusion comes from, but it's manifest.
Well, I don't know how you're confused about Donald Trump's attacks on police officers across the country and his disregard for those who were attacked on January 6th.
Jack, look, to be clear, he either increased federal spending in that bill on law enforcement or he didn't. And it does appear from Michael and from the Democratic congressman that you're just wrong. So do you want to take an opportunity to maybe walk that back?
I do not.
A big chunk of that was ice.
Well, you'd rather double down on a falsehood.
I'd say I think that I'm willing to double down on the fact that Donald Trump has made it difficult for police officers across this country to do their jobs, and he doesn't actually care about them.
Right, and would you be prepared to stake your entire professional reputation on the fact that he slashed federal spending on law enforcement in the budget?
Would I be willing to stake my entire reputation on the fact that Donald Trump has made it more difficult for law enforcement to do their job?
You made a very sweeping statement. This is the problem, you see. It's very easy to say Donald Trump has slashed federal spending on law enforcement. But if it turns out, as is the case, that it was the opposite and he's increased spending in his big, beautiful bill on federal spending on law enforcement, you should just have the good grace to go, I was wrong.
Well, I think if Michael is saying that there is not enough police spending and we need to send in,
he just said,
we need to send in and militarize these cities. But I think the point is clear here, and it's one that we need to argue, which is whether or not Donald Trump has done anything to actually aid law enforcement, or if he's done anything to tackle crime.
If he increased spending, you would say that that is a good thing for the law enforcement, right?
I would say that Donald Trump's plans aren't coherent and don't make some cogent argument. Michael certainly doesn't make some cogent argument of how Donald Trump, who has let crime run free with his policies and within his administration, actually cares about responding to crime, when those who have had the most success aren't the governors of red states, but are the mayors of blue cities that Michael wants to claim are crime infested and being run into the ground. We have seen in DC, we have seen in Chicago, we have seen in Baltimore drops of historic lows in crime, like lower than we've seen in decades now. And I don't know why you won't acknowledge that or maybe learn from some of those Democratic mayors.
Bro, you can just admit you made a false claim on air. It's okay. People make false claims. We could just move on. But you can't, you're doubling down on a easily disproven
when
claim
even the
made.
Democratic congressman says you're wrong.
Maybe that's what you've made your living doing, doubling down
Let
on
me
false
speak for
claims.
myself. Let me speak for myself. What Donald Trump has done is, this is all political. He's picked cities that are Democratic leaning. These are many of these cities. Chicago, the crime is actually declining. If you look at the numbers, in Detroit, for example, crime
The crime
is
in
declining.
Chicago is horrific. I had a son there at the university for a year. It is a dangerous city full of serious crime and a lot of murder. Right, but look, I'm going to bring somebody in now.
But can I point out, because you wanted
Jack,
because Piers, can I respond to the claim
Jack,
that I made?
you referenced the Speaker, Mike Johnson. I'm delighted to say I'm going to be joined now by the Speaker, Mike Johnson, and we'll come back to the panel. Speaker Johnson, welcome your uncensored debut. I finally got you.
I'm sorry it took so long, Piers. I'm a big fan, always have been. So thanks for your work.
You're a busy man, and it's great to have you. We've just been debating a couple of things there with the panel, which you can probably put some light on. Just for the record, in the big, beautiful bill, did the federal government propose to increase spending on law enforcement or decrease it? If you're stressed about back taxes, miss the April deadline, or your books are a mess, well, don't wait. The IRS is cracking down. Penalties add up fast, 5% per month, and up to 25% for not filing. Tax Network USA can help. They've assisted thousands of Americans, from employees to business owners and people who haven't filed for years. They have direct access to powerful IRS programs and expert negotiators on your side. Tax Network USA knows how to win. You'll get a free consultation, and they may even be able to reduce or eliminate what you owe. So don't wait for the next IRS letter. Call 800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Piers. That's tnusa.com/Piers for expert help on your taxes.
It probably was a slight increase. I mean, we put a lot of emphasis on returning to law and order and the rule of law. The president's demonstrated that with executive orders and everything he's done, employing the National Guard in these dangerous cities. And Republicans in Congress are fiercely committed to that as well. We're limited in some respects in what we could do in the big, beautiful bill because it was a reconciliation bill, and not to get too deep in the weeds on the nuances of the way the legislative process works. But when you're reconciling a budget, and what you have to do is prove that you're going to basically reduce it. And so that's what allows it to meet the criteria to pass with only a simple bare majority in the Senate instead of the necessity of 60 votes. But that said, what we did was reprioritize a lot of the spending, and you're going to see the effects of that. It's ridiculous to me that these big city mayors in these blue cities are resisting the help, because I've been pointing to Exhibit A of Washington, D.C., and I tell all the press corps here when they challenge me on it, you're able to walk to your car safely this afternoon and not be in fear of having your purse snatched or your card jacked because President Trump is down the street at 1600 Pennsylvania using his resources to make you safe. How can you even ask these questions? It's absurd to me.
The argument, as you know, that comes back, and one of the panelists cited you personally in your district, and they say there are a lot of red districts, states, counties, where there is a lot of crime. The idea that it's only a blue state issue is disingenuous and just playing partisan politics. What do you say to that?
Well, look, the reality is that crime is a problem in a lot of places around the country. My hometown of Shreveport was cited by Gavin Newsom, who's trying to troll me and being disingenuous. The challenge in Shreveport is that you have a district attorney who was funded by George Soros, a Democrat who runs the show there. And so it's not just the demographics of the city, it matters who's in charge, and it matters what policies they enforce. You have a lot of Democrats who are fiercely committed still even though they don't want to say it publicly anymore, they really would like to defund the police. They want soft on crime policies. They want to continue the madness that has allowed the crime to rise to these record levels. And we're not having any of that. And we have to stop it at any cost. There
are a lot of people, as you know, who love calling Donald Trump a fascist, and people that support him fascist, and people that work with him fascist, including yourself. And one of the things they're citing, I've always thought this is a ludicrous thing, by the way, to use the fascist term, but one of the things that they cite is what is going on right now with the deployment of federal troops into states, which they believe is unconstitutional and the first obvious step to fascism. What do you say to that?
Well, I will tell you my analysis as a constitutional attorney. That's what I did for 20 years. I litigated constitutional law cases in the courts before I got to Congress. This is not unconstitutional. The first responsibility of the government, including the federal government, is the safety of the people. There's national security perspectives with regard to what, how we face challenges internationally, but domestically as well. And the use of the National Guard in these scenarios, for example, has been very effective. In Washington, I've cited DC as a good example. The liberal Democrat mayor here actually, as you saw, applauded the use of the National Guard. Mm-hmm. She's grateful, she said in her own words, for the reinforcements because the Metropolitan Police was not large enough or didn't have sufficient resources to be able to tackle the problem. Well, we've got crime under control. I mean, it dropped dramatically, like 85% in some categories here. And that's an effective thing. And the National Guard troops who are being deployed to do this are grateful and happy that they're able to provide this service. It's a win-win for everybody. So that's not a violation of the Constitution. It's the application of common sense. And some of these Democrat governors and mayors are using it for politics because they have Trump derangement syndrome, and that literally drives their decisions, whether it's good for the people they serve or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've warned my Democrat chums, look, you don't want to get in a position running into midterms or indeed a general election where it looks like you're constantly railing against Donald Trump for being tough on crime. Because everyone knows there is a lot of crime in America, a lot of serious crime, a lot of murder, and equally serious offenses. And actually, a president who looks like he's taking that very seriously, that's likely to be a vote winner, not a vote loser. But defying it and finding endless reasons why you would oppose more draconian action against criminals, I don't think that ever plays well.
No, it doesn't. And, hat tip to the Democrat mayor of D.C. who read the room and realized her citizens are being well served. Crime is reduced. People are happy. They're flourishing again. The capital city is shining like a city on a hill again. And she has to come out and acknowledge that that's a good thing. And it would be foolish for her to say otherwise. So we need other Democrats to put the politics aside, do the right thing for the people, regardless of who gets the credit for it. That's not what this is about.
Is the right thing for the people of America to go after James Comey, whose federal arraignment is today? I was one of many who felt the lawfare waged against Donald Trump went way too far, was very un-American, leading to a ludicrous conviction over an incredibly trivial matter. Parading and shaming an American president in that way, I thought was ridiculous. But I would also say I feel uncomfortable, like a lot of people, about what appears to be a bit of a revenge act now going on against all of the Trump opponents, led by people like Comey. Do you feel comfortable about this?
Well, I would push back on the premise. I don't agree that this is a revenge tour. I mean, look, I have a lot of opinions on this because I rotated off of the House Judiciary Committee. When I became Speaker, I gave up my committee assignments. And I spent almost 7 years on that committee. And we are the ones charged with the jurisdictional authority of oversight over the DOJ. And I watched the way Comey led and how he, in my view, misled in many ways. But we talk a lot about the rule of law. It is a matter of law and order. It is a matter of the rule of law that you have someone like Comey who raised his hand, and I think clearly, I think it's beyond refute that he lied to Congress under oath. Perjury is a very big thing, and it's an even bigger thing when you're a top government official and, a former director of the FBI or one of these big agencies. I mean, that's a big thing. We can't let it go unanswered. And so there's a certain responsibility that is had to prosecute that and make an example of people, not because they were on the wrong side of President Trump at some point, but because they lied to Congress. We can't allow that to go forward. So I think it's appropriate here. And I think, remember, it's not a Republican a group of party officials who brought the indictment. It's a grand jury. I mean, that's our system. They constituted a grand jury. They found reasonable, they felt it was right to bring the indictment, and they made that decision. And so we'll have to see how it plays out now.
Why have all the Epstein files not been released? And do you think they should be?
Well, they're in the process of being released. And this is a very important point. The House Oversight Committee is on this like white on rice, as we say down in Louisiana. Okay, you've got some of the biggest bulldogs in Congress, Republican and Democrat side, united in this quest to have maximum transparency. They're going through it methodically. They're issuing subpoenas. They're being complied with by the Department of Justice. And anyone has these files. Look, I know there's a team deployed. There was a team in New York City over the last 2 weeks combing through the Epstein estate files and going through to find things that had not even been anticipated before. You have 34,000 pages that have already been released. There's more on the way. You've got pending subpoenas out to a number of well-known figures and public officials, et cetera. I mean, they're digging in and moving it as aggressively as possible. So we're for maximum transparency. The one caveat is we have a responsibility and a duty to protect the innocent victims. By some estimates, there may be 1,000 young women who were subjected to these horrific, unspeakable crimes, okay, at the hands of Epstein and his accomplices. And we want to make sure that their identities are protected. So they got to be properly redacted in those files to make sure they don't suffer more harm. And I think that's something everybody agrees with, and we're trying to make sure it's done the right way.
No man has been actually convicted and put in prison for any offense connected to the Epstein thing, despite, as you say, maybe 1,000 female victims here. Are you confident?
Yeah. Well, it's an important point to make. We're in this investigation in the House Oversight Committee. Not only are they trying to bring justice for the victims, they're also trying to determine how justice has been denied for so long and who was responsible for that. And that's a critical component of all this.
Just one final point on that. Ghislaine Maxwell's attempt at an appeal has failed. Donald Trump was asked if you might pardon her. As you know, it's a very contentious issue. He kind of batted it away and said, we'll take a look at it, which seems to suggest the door may be open. Would you want to see Ghislaine Maxwell pardoned, or would you want the opposite?
I would never even consider it. I mean, she's a convicted human trafficker. She was a party to this. She set it up by her own admission. She was involved in all this. There's no way she should ever leave prison.
Let's move on to the government shutdown, because we did a bit of research. You'd expect nothing else, Speaker Johnson, I'm sure. That since 1976, the Republicans have triggered a shutdown 7 major times. The Democrats 3 or 4, depending on how you categorize a full major shutdown. So you've basically been doing this twice as often as they have. Does that give you the high moral ground now to throw opprobrium over them for this shutdown? It's Medicare annual enrollment, and people aged 64 and above should prepare to be bombarded with hundreds of phone calls and texts from agents who are simply pushing the Medicare plans which pay them the most. This is one message you won't want to skip. Most Medicare plans change every year, and many just disappear. Even if you like your current Medicare plan, it's critical to look at the 2026 plans, or you risk losing the coverage you need. That's why you need to know about Chapter. They're independent, they don't work for the government or big insurance, and unlike others, they compare every plan nationwide. Year after year, millions of Americans end up stuck on the wrong Medicare plan for their needs, which means they're overpaying or undercovered. Chapter can review your options in less than 20 minutes. If you're on the right plan, they'll tell you. If you're not, they will help you switch. By doing this, Chapter has helped people to save an average of $1,100 a year. Click the link below to talk to Chapter and take back control of your healthcare. Call Chapter today at 910-708-7584.
Well, yes, because listen, you can't look at those statistics in a vacuum, okay? Every one of those circumstances is different. What's really critically important to point out right now is, unlike many of those skirmishes in the past, when a CR was loaded up with partisan priorities from one of the parties in one of the chambers that was in charge, right now you have unified Republican government. And we did not take this opportunity to do that. What do I mean? Piers, we did not add a single Republican policy or priority or poison pill or gimmick or trick to this very clean, very simple CR. Why do we call it a clean CR? Piers, it literally is simply a continuation of exactly the current status quo and spending and policy, which, by the way, is Biden-era spending and policies. We're still enduring that. We're in the appropriations process to try to change it, but we ran out of time because the end of the fiscal year is September 30th. So we just needed a simple 7-week stopgap funding measure. I could have loaded it up with a bunch of Republican stuff, but I didn't. And that's why the only choice the Democrats have right now in the Senate is to vote to open the government so that we can continue the partisan discussions. That's the difference between now and in the past. This is a totally clean, totally good faith effort, and no one can tell you otherwise about it.
You're a man of faith, and you've invoked your faith since the very start of this shutdown. Do you hope that your prayers get answered sooner rather than later?
I do. I mean, I prayed about that this morning before I came into work and did my press conference. This does and it exacts real harm on real American people, and they should not be pawns in a political game. It's disgusting to me. I mean, I kind of lost my temper at the press conference we here about an hour ago because I'm so aggravated by this. I can't believe that they would pick a fight. I'm just going to say this very plainly, and I don't mean this. I'm trying to practice as much Christian charity as I can in this job, Piers. It ain't easy every day, okay? But it's very simple what's going on here. Chuck Schumer did a 180-degree turn on this. He gave impassioned speeches as recently as March of this year. Why the CR, the same CR, by the way, had to be continued and all that. Why did he change his mind? Because he's afraid he's going to get a challenge from his Marxist left in New York, because that's now in vogue in New York, apparently. They're going to put a Marxist in as the mayor of New York City. And he's terrified by that because he's yesterday's news. So he had to pick a fight against Trump and show a fight and show he's tough and show he's further left than everybody else. And that's what this is. I mean, pure and simple. That's why he changed his tune. And there's no other way to see it. Everybody who's on the Hill and is paying attention sees it clearly, and he needs to be called on it. We need this to come to an end. And yes, I'm praying that it ends quickly, because we've got troops and young pregnant women and veteran services and all these other things we could talk about all day long. People are suffering because of these games, and I've had it.
Talking of changing tunes, you came out strongly on the issue of Bad Bunny performing at the Super Bowl. Had you ever actually heard of Bad Bunny before last week?
Didn't even know who the guy was, okay? And they asked me in the hallway, and they said, "Who you think would be suitable?" I don't know. Lee Greenwood, man. I'm on the other side. I don't know. I don't think, it doesn't sound like a great choice to me. Look, what I'm concerned about, what I said, is a lot of young kids, people watch the Super Bowl, right? And you need to uplift positive things, American values, and not have this controversy. And it just seems unnecessary to me.
You don't think that maybe you're a little bit old in the teeth to be telling young people what they should be listening to on Super Bowl day?
My kids would probably say so, yeah. I still like 80s music, okay? I mean, I confess. But, you need somebody at the Super Bowl halftime, in my view, that can appeal to a broad audience of everybody and not leave out those of us who grew up in the Reagan era.
You know what? I don't disagree. It's because it is a uniquely family event, the Super Bowl.
It is.
You know, when I've watched it in America with American families, everyone's there. Your grandparents, the kids, everyone's there. You actually don't want people that are going to alienate half that room of your family before they even start performing. So we're reaching a point of agreement at the end there, Speaker Johnson. Always a good way to end an interview.
Yes, and I will say you have the greatest accent in all of media. It's not fair, because you sound intelligent, whatever you say, Piers. It's really not fair to everybody else.
Do you know, I was given a brilliant quote about my accent there. It was an NBC executive. He said, you know, Piers, to an American ear, the English accent always conveys an air of presumed higher intelligence. And then he paused and said, which may not actually exist.
I'm with him.
But I will take it. Speaker Johnson, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, my friend. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. All right, let's go back to our panel here. So, look, we've got some stats. It was quite interesting, actually, Jack, because you had a little bit of wriggle room there, because the speaker wasn't quite as emphatic.
No.
But we've done some research while we were listening to that. The total net increase in law enforcement spending in the big, beautiful bill is an estimated $170 billion across the full life cycle of the bill. This does include large allocations for ICE and the border wall, but also $3 billion for the Bureau of Prisons and almost $1 billion for federal law enforcement training centers. The bill was applauded by, among others, the National Fraternal Order of Police. So that does seem to be pretty unequivocal.
But at the same time, I must also point out that so far the DOJ this year has taken away about $500 million in grants the DOJ has. We've also seen about $1 billion in grants that were to be distributed before Donald Trump's administration came in. The DOJ gutting those grant programs that support local police and violent crime reduction. So there's going to be another $1 billion next year. I think those numbers are important to point out. I don't know why the DOJ is reducing support for police. Cutting these grants doesn't really make a lot of sense for Donald Trump's argument. But I think that needs to be. I think that needs to be put forth.
I don't really want to go back over.
I was told by Michael that there was no cuts at all.
Okay, no, I don't want to go back over it.
There was not. As Piers just read, and as the speaker just pointed out, the numbers went up, not down, like you wrongly claimed.
Yeah, that does seem to be. That does seem to be the indisputable takeaway. But let's move on. Michael, talking. Well, hang on one second, Congressman. Michael, just talking of the DOJ. Interesting comment there. Very emphatic statement from the speaker about Ghislaine Maxwell, which is, I think, notable and will make news because Donald Trump left that door open a bit, said, well, I don't really know much about this, which, of course, he obviously does, but I'm going to look into this and we'll take a look. He didn't rule it out as emphatically as Speaker Johnson just did. You know, a lot of pushback, I noticed, to Donald Trump, even potentially leaving a door open to a potential pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell. It appears the speaker certainly was absolutely unequivocal. No. What is your view?
Well, the pardon power rests with the president, not with the Speaker of the House. So ultimately, it will be President Trump's decision to make. I agree with Speaker Johnson in as much as the political cost of pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell would be so high. It would pose an existential threat, I think, to the MAGA coalition. So most likely that will not happen. But the pardon power does exist for a reason. One, to correct cases of injustices that happen along the way in the system. But two, just as a prudential matter, sometimes, if you can gain a little leverage, if you can advance the cause of justice or an investigation, you might be willing to do that sort of thing. That said, I don't think there's really a big disagreement between Trump and Johnson in that Trump could do it, but the cost is so high, I don't see him paying it.
Right.
Well, it doesn't matter what Johnson says. Trump will do what's good for Trump. And, basically, what I wanted to ask Speaker Johnson was, why is Congress only work 15 days in the last 45 days? Why isn't he convening Congress? Why is Congress on a paid vacation while federal employees are going without pay? Why isn't he swearing in the Arizona Congresswoman that will be the 218th vote to release Epstein Files? There's a tough questions that Johnson need to be asked. And
we run out of time, unfortunately. Next time I'll get you to join in, and we can avoid any eliminations. But let me ask you, Jack, about this. This was an interview with Katie Porter, who I know quite well because I appeared on the Bill Maher show with her a while ago, and it didn't go well for her. But she's the lead candidate to be the next governor of California. I have a home in California, so I have a vested interest in who wins this. And it was an extraordinary interview that she did. Let's watch a few of the highlights here.
The question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those voters, okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered our
follow-ups. I don't care.
Well, that was with a very good reporter called Julie Watts. I think it was a CBS affiliate. I mean, Michael, let me start with you on this. I mean, it was excruciating to watch, but no real surprise. You know, I saw the prickly side of Katie Porter on the Bill Maher show when she got challenged about her worldview. It was not a great sight. Let's take a little look a bit of that first, and then I'll come to you.
We talked about people, using things to kind of get likes and get clicks.
That's not what she's doing.
It's
I've got no truck for right against personally, but all I've seen her do is stand up for women's rights to fairness and equality.
Well,
she actually competed against Leah Thomas, and it was obviously unfair. Leah Thomas won one of the races in the NCAA championships by 50 seconds against a bunch of biological females who simply couldn't keep up. That cannot be right. It cannot be fair. And the audience then burst into raucous applause, which she found completely astonishing because it's a liberal crowd. What's going on here, Michael? Why would you, if you're doing a television interview, why would you behave in such a graceless, rude, arrogant manner, do you think?
She's behaving in an entitled way because she has enjoyed entitlement, along with the Democrats, for most of her political career. And I'm sure that she sat down and thought, this is CBS News, this is a mainstream news network, it's going to be a bunch of softballs, I'm not going to have to answer anything. And she gets mild pushback. I have to give a little credit to CBS here. CBS, of the major news networks, generally does a much, much better job than the other ones do. But this is very mild pushback. And even that is so shocking to Katie Porter. If she had to endure 1/1000th the scrutiny that every Republican politician has to endure from the beginning of his career in the media, she wouldn't have made it past dog catcher of Palookaville.
Yeah.
But you're seeing a real sea change here.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, you're shaking your head, but come on, man, that was embarrassing.
Okay, so I don't even want to talk about the Katie Porter of it all. The idea that Republicans face scrutiny from the media, Donald Trump is so dementia-addled right now. He did a text interview with Jake Tapper. Now, I'm not really a fan of Jake Tapper. I think that's a pretty sad move to do a text interview. But do we really think that Donald Trump is on the other side of that phone? No, it's Stephen Miller. It's Russ Vaught.
Actually,
He's
I do. Yeah, I can tell you how I know it.
Playlist.
I can tell you how I know, because I text with Trump regularly, and it is him.
I'm sure you
just
do.
to be clear, Jack, it is him. It is him.
No,
and here's the
fact that Donald Trump has to do a text interview, we can't be serious right now. And he's the one attacking.
Jack, calm down. Caitlin Collins from CNN is in my old slot at CNN, actually, the 9 p.m. hour. Gave an interesting interview yesterday, and she was talking about the fact Trump never sleeps. When you're on Air Force One, you can't really sleep properly because he's up all the time wanting to talk to journalists. He gives more airtime to Q&As with the press and the media than any president ever. That's just a fact. Now, you may think he's got dementia, but I would argue the one that looked like he had dementia was the predecessor in the White House who never did Q&As with the press, never did any hostile interviews with anybody because he didn't have the mental acuity to do it. Trump, whatever you think of him, he's out there every day talking for an hour, 2 hours with the media.
There's a big difference, though, between answering a question and responding to a question. And just because Donald Trump's words
between the two? It's the same thing.
Well, if you ask Donald, that's not even remotely true. If you ask Donald Trump whether or not he wants to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, and he says, well, I don't really know who that is, and also, have you seen my ballroom? That doesn't give you a real answer. He's responding. He can go on and talk about nonsense for an hour, but that doesn't do anything to give you a real answer, to let you know what this administration is doing.
He makes more news.
It's not about news.
But hang on,
it's not about news. It's about he's the president of the United States. He should answer questions.
He makes more news on a daily basis by answering questions than any other world leader. I mean, he does.
Responding to questions. Piers, if you asked me a question and I started ranting about a ballroom that I'm building, and that had nothing to do with the question that you asked me, I think you as a journalist would feel pretty unfulfilled.
Well, just to, ironically, I just asked you about Katie Porter. You said, I don't want to talk about Katie Porter. Let's talk about the Republicans.
Because I had to respond to what Michael said.
You are a glistening example of exactly what you're talking about.
And do you want me to be president of the United States? No,
not really, no.
Katie Porter.
No.
But I don't think anyone came away from that interview.
Let me bring Sri back in here. I mean, Sri, let me bring Sri in. For the art of the political interview, it's not that difficult, really. But when you behave like a complete arse, as Katie Porter did there, you're going to get the kind of mockery it deserves. That interview went 100,000 times bigger on the airwaves of the internet and social media because of the way she behaved than it ever would have done if she just answered the questions.
But Donald Trump lies. Most of his answers are lies and not truths.
Why are you talking about Donald Trump?
Well, we're talking about politicians answering questions.
You've just pulled a Jack. I've asked you one question, and you're talking about somebody completely different. This is what I mean. So,
you're talking about Donald Trump answering questions, but he doesn't.
I'm talking about Katie Porter.
But so, Piers, are you going to hold us more accountable for wanting to discuss multiple topics than you are the president of the United States?
No,
and if
he's
we
not
want to
on
talk
the
about
panel,
transparency,
Jack.
where's the transparency? I'm glad that you asked
you're
Speaker
new
Johnson
to the panel.
about Epstein.
Jack, you're new to Uncensored. Here's how this works. I get a bunch of people in, right? Unusually, I get people who don't agree with each other, and we have a civilized or sometimes an uncivilized debate. But what we do is we discuss topics. I throw it to each of you, and you give an answer to the topic. What you guys have been doing on the left side of this debate is you've been making a point like The trouble with the Republicans is you ask them one thing, like Trump, and they answer another, and then you both do exactly the same thing.
Look, Katie Porter should have finished her interview.
There you go.
But then Donald Trump should be more honest. Donald Trump should be more honest.
Those two things can be completely true at the same time. But you should just, in terms of an interview with a politician, you just failed as well. Because all you had to say was that, right? How hard is it to just give a straight answer to a straight question? When I do interviews where I'm the subject, people ask me questions, I just answer them. I don't care. Ask me whatever you want. I couldn't give a monkey's cuss.
And I was happy to get to the end of that point if Michael hadn't so rudely interrupted me. I don't know what that's
Well, you had a
about.
chance to
get to
answer
your
it straight
point,
away.
Jay.
That was
Please.
the point.
No, I was saying I didn't think it was a great interview. It certainly wasn't a great interview. I don't think
I thought
that
it was a
I'm breaking any news by
masterclass.
saying
Honestly, it was a masterclass in how not to conduct a political interview. But if I'm a Californian resident, and in fact, I am a California resident for a lot of the year, I've got a home there, I watch that and think, why would you vote for somebody so entitled, so arrogant, so determined to belittle that journalist who was just doing a job? I mean, it was really actually ugly to watch.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a great answer. I didn't think that that's a great response. I will say that the beginning of the question was asking, do you think that you need to win the 40% of Trump voters to win or convince some of them to win the governor's race? And Katie Porter's response was, no, that's not how math works. And I think she gave a fine answer at first. When she was continued to be asked, she should have just said, no, I want to convince those voters. She didn't. I thought the question didn't really make a lot of sense, at least mathematically. But no, there was no reason for her to
I thought it made a lot of sense. She was just making the point. Look, you got 40% of the electorate there.
Yeah, and you should want to convince
If you
them.
just write them off, that's not good politics, and it's a completely valid point to make. Michael, I want to play a clip from our old friend AOC, who's got into trouble for what she said about Stephen Miller.
They are scrapping and grasping at straws because they have nothing else. Laugh at them. Stephen Miller is a clown. I've never seen that guy in real life, but he looks like he's like 4'10", and he looks like he is angry about the fact that he's 4'10", and he looks like he is so mad that he is 4'10", that he's taking that anger out at any other population possible.
Well, there was a lot of pushback on this, and then she issued this apology.
I want to express my love for the short king community. I don't believe in body shaming. I am talking about how big or small someone is on the inside. Like, for example, I have no idea how tall Andrew Tate is. No idea at all. But that guy looks to me like 5'3", like 5'3", 5'4". Whereas...
So, Michael, I mean, being obviously very heightist, a big no-no with the woke community, and she's obviously wrong about Stephen Miller. I stood next to him at a party, and he's a lot taller than 4'10". What did you make of this rather cringe-worthy double video?
Well, the apology was particularly bad because it was utter nonsense. I know. I said when I said he looked like he was 4'10", I was talking about his heart. Yeah, okay. But then her first claim, she says, "Look, I've never met this guy, but I bet he's 4'10". So I think AOC is consulting exactly the same sources that our friend Jack over here is, namely her imagination. And as you point out, Piers, Stephen Miller is obviously much taller than that. But this psychobabble typifies all of the left-wing arguments. It's obviously fact-free, but notice she doesn't take on Stephen Miller's argument about immigration. She doesn't take on his argument about law enforcement. She doesn't deal. She just tries to impute to him some kind of nefarious psychological motives. It's the same way when the left talks to us about abortion. They never deal with the actual bioethical issues. They just say we hate women or something like that. When we talk about law enforcement, they say we're racist. I don't know. And so it's all this psychobabble nonsense to avoid the real issues, because the real issues favor Stephen Miller and the Republicans and not her.
Well, Jack, you said about this, Donald Trump, not about this, but you said separately, Donald Trump doesn't want to negotiate an end to the shutdown because he's too dementia-addled to understand it. Stephen Miller is running the White House, and it's time to start calling it out. So
I do think Stephen Miller.
Your concern is that he's actually running the White House.
No, I do think that Stephen Miller is in charge of most things. I think Russ Vought is in charge of most things happening at the White House right now. Again, Donald Trump very focused on his ballroom. But Michael, little snowflakey of you. What day are we on of this AOC story, this non-story? I thought that the right liked comedy. I thought that we could make jokes again. Everyone's in their feelings. We saw Stephen Miller on Fox. He's like rubbing his eye. Verge of tears. She said that I was short and I'm bald too. Stephen Miller. Like,
is that what happened? That's not what I saw happen at all.
Does he have more important things to concern himself with? His buddy Jesse Waters seems to think that he's a pretty swell guy. I don't know why he needs to listen to what AOC has to say and respond to it. That is all that Fox was talking about. But yeah, Piers, I do think that Stephen Miller is running things in the White House right now. I don't really think that Donald Trump is all too concerned with anything. Project 2025 was laid out for him because Trump has no interest in negotiating or governing or doing anything that isn't putting billions of dollars in his pocket through a crypto scam. That is what Trump is ultimately interested in. So he'll have his goons take care of the rest, and he'll do his Spotify playlist and I guess make the Rose Garden look uglier.
And what in between, he's just trying to forge peace in the Middle East. It's a busy old time for him. Michael, what do I end on a story that I think enraged you as much as it enraged me? Amazon airbrushing James Bond's gun out of thumbnails for the movies on Prime. Let's take a look at this. I mean, they've just taken the guns off, and I've got to be honest, they've left Bond in these pictures looking, well, just a little bit effeminate. So it's like a double whammy, isn't it? What's going on here?
Is he tickling himself now? Is Sean Connery giving himself a little pinch on the what? So they have to take away the gun because that's politically incorrect. They probably have to take away the womanizing, right? There's no way that's kosher these days. I think they have to take away. You're not allowed to be violent. So the karate chopping and all that. You got to take away the booze. That's no good. If you were smoking pot, that'd be one thing, but you got to take away the booze. So I think basically, you just have to take away James Bond. That's going to be the new sanitized version. Nothing works anymore.
I think the only answer, Congressman, is to bring Don Lemon in as the new Bond.
Well, I'm getting all entertained. This is all very entertaining. But look, I'm concerned about the 4 million people who are losing health care. I'm looking at, millions of people not able to get their insulin, get treatment for their children. Right now, we need to get this government going. The two parties need to come together, negotiate, take care of the American people. I know this is all.
Congressman, would you agree to a clean CR? Because the Democrats obviously shut it down. They wanted to change the fund. But would you agree to a clean CR to just keep the government going?
What is with this victim complex?
Not continuation of the same old. Not continuation of the same old. We need to.
So you don't want to get those people insulin and all the health care you talked to? Just a clean CR. Just keep it going just like it was. It was working okay. You wouldn't agree to that. You're going to keep the government shut down. Okay.
Look, we got to.
Who's in charge?
We got to address that. Healthcare is a big, huge issue. People's premiums are going to double. Their co-pays are going to double, triple in some cases. In fact, the top 10 red states will have premiums tripling and quadrupling.
Yes, and Obamacare was dreadful for healthcare premiums. I agree.
I don't disagree. This is all important, but I do think we should focus right now on James Bond and his gun. Jack, should Amazon be neutralizing Bond like this? What kind of message does that send the world?
I didn't even see this as a story. Should they be taking away his gun? I don't know. If the original poster worked, maybe keep it. If this new one doesn't, maybe don't. I don't know. You, Piers, I'm sure on your show, y'all beta test your thumbnails and they're doing the A/B and seeing which one is better.
Oh, we'll be doing some great ones with you. Don't worry.
Oh, thank you very much, Piers. I appreciate it. Make sure my hair doesn't look too bad.
Well, you'll be pleased to know. Actually, Michael will be most pleased to know they have, after a backlash, Amazon have restored the guns.
That is good because when they took the gun away, that was the beta test.
I don't know what they've done. They've done something, but they haven't restored the guns. I don't know quite what they've done. Doesn't make any sense that, but
they'll figure it out.
They've done something anyway. So we'll see if we can get the guns back. I mean, because James Bond without a gun, kind of pointless. What's the point, really? I've got to leave it there. Panel, great debate. Thank you very much. Eric Trump is the executive vice president of the Trump Organization, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise which manages the president's sprawling business empire. That responsibility placed Eric Trump squarely in the sights of those who sought to block the president's comeback using the courts and the law. Eric is officially the most subpoenaed man in American history. In his new book, Under Siege, tells the inside story of how a political campaign took its toll on the family who bear the most famous name in the world. And he joins me now. Eric, welcome back to Uncensored.
Good to be on, Piers.
You know, it's an extraordinary book about an extraordinary period in modern times, really, which was the kind of war against your dad, against you and your family, seemingly a war designed with one motivation, which was to prevent him ever getting back to the White House. And of course, we know how it ended. You know, when you finished the book, what was your kind of overview about what you'd all been through?
Well, I think, Piers, the irony is your book would not have been able to be written, right? Woke is dead, had it not been for ours, right? Had it not been through the battle that we were, right? I call it Under Siege for a very simple reason. They tried to impeach my father multiple times, right? They raided Mar-a-Lago. They wrote the Dirty Steele dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton. You know, they made up the Russia lies. They deplatformed us off of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, right? They took my father off the ballot in Maine and Colorado. They went after Supreme Court justices. I became the most subpoenaed man ever. They raided Melania's closet and Barron's room. I mean, they weaponized every attorney general in the United States, every district attorney in far blue areas of the United States to go after my father. 91 indictments. We've gotten every single one of them overturned. They debanked us. They deplatformed us. They wanted to see us in jail. They wanted to see us arrested. They wanted to see my father behind bars. They wanted me to be right next to him. They wanted to see our family bankrupt. They wanted to see the MAGA movement dead. And then if that wasn't enough, and I spent a lot of time talking about that in Under Siege, then they tried to kill my father in Butler, not the first time when they took off part of his ear, but then they tried to kill him at his golf course in Palm Beach. And then, you know, a couple weeks, literally this book, Piers, came out 3 days before Charlie Kirk's assassination. They've done everything they could to take us out, and we prevailed in the long run. They put every arrow in our back that they possibly could, but we won. And this is the inside account to that war and that story and my fight and behind the scenes within our family, you know, of kind of those trials and tribulations.
You knew Charlie Kirk very well. I interviewed Charlie a few times. There was a hideous irony that there was somebody who purposefully went into the lion's den, if you like, of people who instinctively didn't like him, didn't agree with him, and invited open dialogue, invited respectful debate. And I've seen so many clips of him since, many of which are taken out of context, but where his general demeanour around people that really hated him was to say, come on, let's have a proper debate here. You're entitled to your view. I'm entitled to mine. Prove me wrong was his mantra, which should have been the kind of bedrock of any civilized democratic society. And yet for doing that, he gets a bullet in the neck and is assassinated. What does that say about where we've got to in public discourse?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech, freedom of religion, is a bedrock principle of the United States of America, right? By the way, I see a lot of the UK not doing well with that principle right now, and I know it bothers you, and it bothers a lot of people. It bothers a lot of people over here, but that's right. I mean, you had a guy called Charlie Kirk a fascist. That guy proceeded to dress up in all black and go 200 yards away on a rooftop with a sniper rifle and shoot Charlie Kirk in the neck. Yet they call us fascists, right? They call my father anti-Semitic, and yet, my sister's, Orthodox, as I think you probably know very well because you know Ivanka and you know Jared. They called my father a sexist, yet isn't it ironic how his first campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, who you know very well, was a woman, and his, second winning campaign manager, Susie Wiles, who you know very well, is also female. So it's kind of, they've used identity politics every single day, and your book, Woke is Dead, is actually like, it's exactly this. We've killed, they can't use it against us anymore because no one in America actually believes them. But it is the great irony. I mean, Charlie was out there talking to college campuses, young kids who were engaged in a political process, who were having fun, the best of the next generation. And yet you have people with sniper rifles standing on rooftops, literally shooting over their heads. And yet, that's how they label us. And, the leftists in this country they're dangerous. They've turned violent. They've lost the narrative. They have lost the verbal war. And that's why they've tried to kill my father multiple times. That's why they would love to see me off of the stage, because our voice has been something that they can't repute, that they can't fight against. They've literally, hence the reason that obviously Kamala lost the popular vote, and hence the reason that Kamala lost every swing state. Every state in this country tacked to the right, Piers, right? I mean, every single state in the country went my father's direction. We won places like Miami-Dade, which were typically liberal in this country, by 11%. It's the first time Miami-Dade's been won in 37 years in this nation. We won counties in California that could have never even been conceived of being won by a conservative before. This nation has changed in a very, very big way over the last, 9-month period of time, and our nation's better for it.
Yeah, no question. I mean, you very kindly mentioned my book of comments. I've actually got a hot off the press copy of Woke is Dead. And, it starts actually with several
We'll put them next to each other, Piers.
Yeah, let's do a joint plug here, Eric. Here we go. But it's interesting because I do actually start with a conversation I had with your dad after he wins. And I rang him the following morning and we had a brief but really quite profound conversation because it wasn't a remarkable turnaround of his life, in every sense, professional, personal, everything. And I sort of make the argument in the book that I go over all the most ridiculous woke excesses and about the suppression of free speech, particularly on college campuses and so on. And I kind of conclude that part of the reason that I believe woke is dead as a mindset, the wokeism is dead, that your father's victory, in a way, put the stamp on that because he was able to stand there and say, just to be clear, biological men will not compete in women's sport, okay? And the Democrats were not able to say that. And so, yes, the economy was a huge part of his victory. Yes, immigration was a huge part, the surrender of the southern border under Biden and so on. But I do believe what they try to frame as culture wars and what the Democrats still like to pretend wasn't that important in the election. But I think a lot of average Americans went, whatever you think of Donald Trump, maybe they didn't even like him, some of them, right? But they just thought, actually, he just speaks of common sense, right? This guy just knows what a woman is. He doesn't want to have America engaged in endless foreign wars. He wants us to pay less tax. He wants to have a strong southern border. He wants to be tough on crime, and so on. And you sort of go through a checklist. There was an interesting thing in The Economist magazine a couple of weeks ago, and it just said that in Britain, your dad's not that popular personally, but that Trumpism, in other words, what he stands for, is increasingly popular, which I thought was really interesting. That you don't have to like him to understand that, obviously, I like him and you like him, but you don't have to like him to appreciate that his core principles, his core policies are increasingly popular.
Yeah, that's right. And frankly, you want a very tough person, being the commander-in-chief of the free world, right? I mean, I love my grandmother to death, and she'd probably make a terrible president of the United States, right? You want somebody that's tough, and you want somebody with no BS, and that's exactly who he is. Yeah, listen, you've been friends with the family for a very long time. You and I go back 20 years on The Apprentice and lots of other places. But you're right. I think you said that so beautifully. I actually think the culture wars were maybe even a bigger part of the victory. Listen, Piers, I'm a tall guy, right? I'm 6'5", weigh 215. Me swimming in collegiate female sports, like that's not fair,
it's
right?
Ridiculous.
And no one. And I'd be on the campaign everywhere. I'd be in Pennsylvania, where in America you've got a lot of steel country, coal country. You'd have these union workers that come up to me. If my grandfather knew I was voting for a Republican, they would shake their head. And I go, let me ask you a question. Would your grandfather, who worked literally, the coal mines, would they be okay with me swimming against females in college? No, they would come in and they would shoot you. I mean, they would literally kill you if you swam against their daughters. And that's the exact point. The radical left has tacked so far left, right? While my father, what does he want? He wants the greatest economy. He wants freedom of religion, freedom of speech. He wants the lowest taxes. He wants to keep government out of people's ways. He wants zero wars. My father is fundamentally against wars. He wants to have the greatest army. So if we ever have to hit an adversary, you knock their damn heads off. But he doesn't want to go to war. I mean, I've seen him personally, Piers, stop 5 or 6 wars that would have been raging around the world. And obviously you see what he's trying to do with what's happening in Israel and Palestine right now. My father just wants common sense. He wants a strong America. He wants a nonviolent world, and he wants the best for our country. And I'm incredibly proud of him.
What's it like being Donald Trump's son, Eric, honestly?
Yeah. He's a great man. He's my best friend in the world. I love him. And I stood on that stage ever since we went down that escalator. I stood on that stage every single day, and I fought by his side. And because of that, I took arrows that you couldn't possibly imagine. Piers, I think you know me well enough. I'm no BS, honest person, no drugs, no laptops from hell, no prostitution, no finger painting like Hunter Biden. Honest, wake up early, run a great company. I've done so many great things in the UK, as with our assets in Aberdeen and Turnberry. Built some of the great assets anywhere around the world, have done so with respect and dignity. And they came after us like I was a dog. And I remember in the book, I talk a little bit about this. We come out of a courtroom, and And my father goes, I don't know how. He just got indicted 34 times. It's since been totally overturned. He goes, I don't know how, but we're going to win this, honey. We're going to win this whole thing. He meant the court case. He meant the entire presidency. And I looked at him. I go, Pops, it's either the White House or jail. Like that's how far we've come as a country. It's either the White House or jail. They wanted to see us gone. They wanted to see us bankrupt. They wanted to see the Trump name off of every property in New York and around the world. They wanted us silenced. That's why they gag ordered all of us so many times, the court system. And yet, people in this country, they didn't buy it. There's only so many times you can cry wolf. In life, you see that a lot in the UK. There's only so many times you can cry wolf before people stand up and say enough of this nonsense, enough of this garbage, and they voted so overwhelmingly for my father. So, under siege is the siege. But, the amazing part of the story is having the greatest siege of all time and persevering through it and winning and being able to fundamentally change who we are as a nation, what we stand for, and kind of return the values of God and society and red, white, and blue back to the United States of America.
What do you feel right now is his number one priority?
Yeah. Well, he's certainly spending a tremendous amount of time stopping the wars. I mean, I can't tell you how much time he's spending trying to mediate cultures that have hated each other for 1,000 years, trying to bring people together. My father hates wars. He sees these kids in Ukraine and in Russia. They're in trenches. You can watch the videos on YouTube, as horrible as they are. They come across, around a little corner in a trench. I have an 8-year-old son. I have a 6-year-old daughter. Right, the amount of time that goes into raising those kids and bathing them and teaching them and disciplining them and bring them to school. You see this kid come around a corner in a trench and, his life is expunged in about, an eighth of a second. I mean, so needlessly. You're seeing that obviously all over the Middle East. You're seeing that all over the world. And he's spending a lot of time expunging wars. And then the other thing is standing up for America. He does not want America to get ripped off. He doesn't want to be paying for the wars of all other nations. He doesn't want to be the protectors of all other nations. He wants to have, fair trade, and we've never had fair trade in this country. I mean, everybody's used America as the piggy bank, as you know better than anybody. So he wants to have the greatest economy in the world, and he wants to remain the number one superpower, and he wants the Western world, and clearly, Piers, I include you in this, right? And in the UK, our greatest ally by far, he wants to have the Western world be the strongest it's ever been before, and he's working very hard on all of that.
On the critical side, his opponents say, ever since he won back power, having indicated there'd be no revenge attacks, he's been on a relentless campaign of revenge against his political enemies, from James Comey to others. And when he stood up at Charlie Kirk's memorial, after that incredibly moving speech, of course, by Charlie Kirk's widow, he was very honest. He said, look, I don't think I could be like that with my enemies. I hate them. And people say, if he's president of the United States, he should be more unified in the way he speaks about people. He shouldn't say he hates his opponents. He should try and bring people together. He shouldn't be waging revenge against people like Comey and others. He should move above that. What do you say to that?
They raided our home. They tried to destroy him. Piers, just honestly, anybody, just send that book to those people who make that argument. You can't. They took my father off the ballot in Colorado and in Maine. They tried to subvert democracy. I was the one, Piers, that got the call from the FBI and the New York Times and the Washington Post. Eric, I hear you have a secret server in the basement of Trump Tower in New York City communicating directly with the Kremlin in Russia. We didn't know anybody in Russia. It was all made up lies. They made up a dossier that had my father apparently doing the most unthinkable, nasty, grotesque, crude things that you could imagine, paid for by Hillary Clinton and perpetrated by the FBI and the DOJ in this country. They tried to destroy him. They tried to imprison him. They tried to bankrupt him. They rigged more things than you can possibly imagine. And so when James Comey very apparently goes and lies to Ted Cruz in a congressional hearing, an FBI director who, by the way, was leaking memos to the New York Times. I mean, I want our FBI directors in this country to make sure planes aren't crashing into buildings, to make sure that, the Western way of life is preserved and safe, right? And he's leaking memos to the New York Times. Then he apparently lies about it. It's very apparent to me that he lied about it, and all of a sudden you're weaponizing justice. After they sent 30 FBI agents to raid his wife's closet. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from these people. They are the most dishonest group of people that you've ever met in your entire life, who also, by the way, wanted him dead. And so, I find that, highly, highly ironic. Now, as to the, I couldn't, when you mentioned the Charlie Kirk incident, his wife said, listen, I forgive the guy who just shot my husband in his neck. Everybody in the world saw blood spewing out of the front of his body. I don't know. I'm probably with my father. I'm not sure if that happened to one of my kids or if that happened to Laura or if that happened to a family member. I'm not sure if I could forgive that person either. Maybe that's just a genetic trait, but I think a lot of people would have trouble forgiving a madman who literally, sniped somebody from a rooftop with a high-power hunting rifle.
We saw Elon Musk and your father briefly having a sort of rapprochement after their big falling out. I mean, has there been any development on that? Do you think they'll be back working together, or was that just a kind of after the war, a little peace offering and they move on?
Well, I was right there. I was in that same picture that you probably saw, and it was fun to see them back together. Listen, Elon represents the best of what we do as Americans better than anybody in the world, which is entrepreneurialism and, the fact that he's catching these rockets using, these chopsticks. And I mean, he's incredible at everything he does. We need 200 Elon Musks. I'm the biggest proponent of his and everything that he stands for. And, there's no one who's more into the Doge initiative than Eric Trump, right? Is how I run our company and is how, any capitalist, thinks. But no, I think fundamentally they love and appreciate each other. And, listen, they're two very big personalities, and you know how that is. I mean, you've been on the receiving end of that a couple times, Piers. I could probably count more.
Yeah,
I could probably count with you indeed. With you and my father, I could probably count more than a couple times, but at the same time, you guys still love each other, right? And
do you know what? It's really interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day actually about the Elon Musk thing, and I said, I've had spectacular fallings out with your dad, and normally because I've said, I've criticised him or something, and he doesn't like being criticised, but he doesn't hold the grudge for very long. He does with some people, but actually most of the time I've noticed, if you just, there'll be a moment when if you go back a long way with him, he's not a long grudge guy.
No, I think that's right. Yeah, he'll see you a month later and give you a big hug. And by the way, most of the time he's actually the first person to crack a joke about the very grudge that you had.
Yes.
3 weeks earlier. So now, listen, this country needs Elon Musk. This world needs Elon Musk. The Western civilization certainly needs him. They also need a Donald Trump, and I think those guys are a formidable team, and I think they have massive admiration and respect for one another.
Is the constant hint he puts out that he might run again in 2028, is that just a massive wind-up of the libs, or is it something, do you think he might have a little dart at?
So I started that, Piers. Somebody very close to me came. They go, you got to wear the Trump 2028 hat. Just see the entire mainstream media in the country melt down, right? And I did that. So I just took a picture. I put it on my head in my office. And it broke the internet. Elon was retweeting. Everybody was retweeting it. We sold like 50,000 hats in a period of like a couple hours, right? I mean, people absolutely loved it. But the media started writing in, does this mean your father doesn't believe in the United States Constitution? Is he going to subvert the will of the founding fathers? And I'm literally just snapshotting these emails and I'm posting them on Instagram. I just thought it was funny that you could trigger a media so easily in this country, right? I mean, they knew it was a complete joke. But no, does my father plan to run again in 2028? No, that's certainly not the intention. And he's even said that, Piers, a million times. But it is funny when you can trigger them that way because they're just so on edge, right? And so sometimes you need to just, you need to poke them a little bit. They deserve it. And that's exactly what I was doing when I came up with that Trump 2028 hat. Yeah,
I mean, your father's so all-consumed the Republican Party. It does beg the question, who carries that sword going forward after him? A lot of names been put out there. Obviously, J.D. Vance is a clear favourite. He's the vice president. He's, very close with your father. They work very well together. But I look at somebody like you, right, who's running the Trump organization. Whenever I interview you, I look at you and think, well, I could easily see you entering the political arena. But when you read your book, it's really a kind of lengthy explanation for why it would probably be the last thing in the world you'd want to put yourself through. Or is it a motivation to perhaps one day think, well, why not?
It's probably more of a motivation to do it, right? It shows that evil can triumph over, or good can triumph over evil. I mean, I think that's the greatest takeaway. And against unrelenting odds, you can win. I mean, we beat the deep state in this country, right? We beat wokeness in this country. We beat mainstream media in this country, we made them irrelevant. The media in the United States today is irrelevant. No one trusts them. No one likes them. Independent voices are what's winning the day. You've got a great independent voice, Piers. I know you're on Main Street, but you've got a great independent, and those independent voices are winning the day. There's a lot of people, I can tell you, right, in the UK who probably don't like the book that you just wrote because they perfectly align with it. But guess what? You've developed an unbelievable voice. I've developed an unbelievable voice. My father has. Don has. So many people. Charlie Kirk had that independent voice. I mean, go down. Look at Joe Rogan. Look at Joe Rogan or Patrick Bet-David or any of these people. You know every single one of them, as do I. They have made NBC News, they have made ABC News irrelevant. And I spent a lot of time in Under Siege talking about this. I mean, my wife Laura's got the top show on Fox News on the weekends, right? It's 9 o'clock on Saturday. She's got better ratings than all the network shows, every one of the network shows in prime time during the week. And this is cable news. People want independent voice. People want the podcasts. And it's making the very people who are literally the political operatives, who are the PR arm of the Democratic Party, it's making them irrelevant, and they can't stand it.
What are the chances of the Trump heir politically being a Trump?
Don't give me nightmares. Piers, please don't give me nightmares right now. Listen, I think we've all developed an amazing voice. I never thought I was going to stand on a political stage. I'm a builder. You've seen the projects that I've built. You've walked through Turnberry. You've walked through, so many of our properties. You know what I do every day. At the same time, listen, we've been incredibly fortunate, done very, very well. And at some point, you actually have to fight for the things that you believe in. My father didn't need this job. My father, hey, he could have done another 5 seasons of The Apprentice. You could have been there by his side. I could have been there by his side. We could have had a lot of fun doing it. He could have made a couple of $1 billion doing that. He wouldn't have had to run against 16 candidates in a Republican primary, only to then run against Hillary Clinton. He wouldn't have been stuck in a courtroom every single day, right? He could have enjoyed Mar-a-Lago and Trump Force One and me and kids. He could have, right? He wouldn't have had to deal with any of that stress. And yet, why did he do it? Because he wanted to save, the United States, a country that literally had, a degenerate president, in Joe Biden, a guy who was somebody was using his auto pen to make every decision in the United States government. He couldn't stand to see our country and our Constitution, our family values and religion and everything else and wokeness absolutely go to hell. And so I think for all of us, if it ever got to that same spot again, he's created great fighters in the Republican Party, and JD is one of them. But if it ever got to that spot again, there is a chance that one of us would throw our hat in the race and give them hell.
It sounds like, to me, Eric Trump, you're not entirely ruling out that person might be you.
Again, don't give me nightmares, Piers. I've gone through absolute hell over the last 12 years. But no, listen, I'm proud of what he's done. I'm proud of the voice we've all developed. It's given us an armor that I never thought I'd have in life to this extent, right? Of just being able to tolerate absolute BS and nonsense. It created fighters out of all of us. And be careful what you ask for in life. He's created, my father's gotten rid of more rhinos, Republicans in name only, as we call them in the U.S., than anybody before. And all of a sudden, you've got a party that's strong. You've got a movement that I think is going to be next to impossible to turn around the other way. And he's really rewritten modern politics and certainly, the vision for the United States of America.
Kamala Harris says he hasn't got a mandate to be president, Eric.
Well, that's kind of funny because, we won the popular vote. We beat her in every swing state. We beat her in every state in the country, went to the right, meaning, toward us. Plus in California, I call her book, what was her book called? 107 Days? I think it's 107 Days of Sobriety, right? Most of her campaign speeches, she couldn't get out basic words. It was unbelievable when she was giving her economic policy speeches and she's talking about, she's trying to say price, gouging, and she's saying price gauging, and you're sitting there saying, okay, this is a person who's going to run a $33 trillion economy. I don't think so, but no, it was one of the great political beatdowns in history, and after what they put us through, after the siege that I talk about in here, I couldn't be happier, and there was nothing that made me happier, Piers, than seeing her certify the vote on my birthday of all things, January 6th. She had to get up on, and certify as VP the fact that Donald Trump had beaten her as president, and it was a glorious day for me.
There's just one problem, Eric, if you do run for president, and it's down to well, let me play you a clip and get your reaction. It's down to this guy, Pete Hegseth.
No more beards, long hair, superficial individual expression. We're going to cut our hair, shave our beards, and adhere to standards. Because it's like the broken windows theory of policing. It's like when you let the small stuff go, the big stuff eventually goes.
If you do become commander-in-chief, Eric, the beard has to go, says Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, I guess so. But Piers, he actually has longer hair than I do. Like, that's like the great irony. He's got phenomenal hair. And Pete's a very good buddy of mine. I'm gonna call him up and say, listen, now that you run the military, you've got to shave it, buddy. You've got to take the bic and you've got to bic your head. But honestly, isn't it nice to see the guy, right? Who runs our military? Isn't it really nice to say, you know what, lose the gut. Learn how to do a pull-up, right? We no longer have Admiral Rachel Levine. I'm sure she found her way somehow into your book. Who is transgender, who is running Health and Human Services in the United States of America. Give me a break. And you see Pete out there on the football field, and he's doing push-ups with the cadets. That's what you want. That's the mentality you want. I agree with them 100%.
I like the fact. My brother was an army colonel. My brother-in-law was an army colonel in the British Army. I like the fact you've got a guy who's been there, done the hard yards in the US military, and he wants to return the standards to the high levels that he went through when he was in it. I see no problem with that. I think that it's good to see somebody who actually was a recent member of the armed forces. Who cares that much?
And just look at one statistic, Piers. A month before my father took office under Joe Biden, they were begging people to take the job and getting totally unqualified people because no one was actually applying and right, they had, and then 2 months later, right, actually having a little testosterone and, believing in the United States of America and saying, hey, we're going to stand behind you. We're going to build the greatest fighting force in the world. We're going to have the most lethal fighting force in the world. That's the United States of America. They have the highest military recruitment in history. That was a 4-month transformational change. 4 months to go from the worst to the best. And so he's doing a great job. And by the way, that benefits humanity. That benefits the UK. That benefits our allies around the world. Having America be strong is just number one. And we're strong again.
Eric, it's great to see you. Just reminded me, we've never played golf. And I've just come back from Scotland, where I came 5th in the Dunhill Links Pro-Am.
I saw that.
So I'm surprised you haven't heard about this. I was actually texting.
Turnberry. I have the 2 best courses in Aberdeen.
Well,
so anytime you want to play, I'll host 2.
Next time you're over, I'm coming up to take you on. I was
we'll do a little Ryder
texting with your father during the tournament, so you can tell him if he wants to join in. I quite fancy a couple of trumps on my belt notch.
I like that. We'll do a little Ryder Cup. Piers and person of your choice versus. The president and Eric Trump. I like that. We'll do it at Turnberry.
I'll bring Rory McIlroy.
Don't bring Rory. No, we're going to conflict him out.
By the way,
we're going to make sure.
Final question on golf, talking of Under Siege. Your view of the unruly behaviour of some of the American fans at the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, listen, I don't love seeing golfers have beers thrown at them, right? That's less than perfect. It's a gentleman's sport, and I'm not into that. And I know Rory. By the way, Rory's he's a sweetheart. He's become a good friend of mine. He lives about 2 doors down from me. He's right next to us. I see Rory all the time, and he's a wonderful guy. He loves Kai Trump, by the way, my niece, and
yeah, she's great.
Has a great relationship. But no, I don't like to see that stuff, especially when it comes to the wives and et cetera. But hey, listen, I don't think your fans always win the day either, by the way, Piers.
Our fans may not, Eric.
I see some of your sporting events. You guys aren't exactly nailing it. Now, we don't always rule the day either. But
I've got to say, compared to a football crowd, I think they got it easy over there. And actually,
they got
I noticed that when the American fans stopped abusing the Team Europe, we didn't play as well. So maybe they should have let them carry on.
Right? It's 100%.
But anyway, the bottom line is we beat you, and I think that was the main takeaway. I'm sure you'd agree.
Well done. Well done. My father and I are going to beat you at Turnberry or Aberdeen next time we're there.
You know what? I'm looking forward to it already.
Bring your A game.
Eric Trump, best of luck with the book, Under Siege. It's a cracking read. It's actually quite an unsettling read as well. It's a remarkable story, though, and I'm glad you're still here to tell the tale, because there are many people who would love to have seen the back of you, and it's good that you're here. Thank you very much for coming back on Uncensored. I appreciate it.
Thanks, my friend.
And I'll see you at Megyn Kelly's event. I think we're doing it together in Miami.
It will be fun. We'll have a great time.
Looking forward to it. Take care.
Take care, my friend.
Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, We will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain, and we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.